I was halfway through my morning coffee, the kind of black, no-nonsense brew that could wake a coma patient, when the piece of Lone Star Ranch shattered like cheap glass. A crash echoed from my front door, followed by a screech that could have peeled paint. "Jack Thompson, your fence is a disgrace to this community." I leaned back in my porch rocker, squinting through the Texas dawn. There she was, Karen, the HOA president, wielding a baseball bat like she was auditioning for the apocalypse. Little did she know I'm not just any rancher. I'm a retired Special Forces sniper, and she'd just picked the wrong house to play homewrecker. I'm Jack Thompson, 55, and I bought this sprawling patch of dirt and dreams to escape the world's noise. After 2 decades of dodging bullets and outsmarting enemies in places you won't find on a tourist map, I figured a quiet life raising cattle and sipping coffee was my due. Lone Star Ranch is my sanctuary, 120 acres of freedom with a rustic cedar fence I built myself. It's sturdy, it's handsome, and apparently, it's Karen's personal vendetta. For months, she's been pelting me with letters about unapproved exterior structures under Rule 7.4 of the HOA bylaws, which demands aesthetic consistency, like we're all living in a gated community instead of rural Texas. My fence, she claims, is too Wild West. I ignored her. Big mistake. Now here she was, escalating from passive-aggressive notes to full-on door-smashing lunacy. The bat came down again, splintering my oak door like it had personally insulted her. "You will repaint this abomination, or I'll fine you into oblivion," she shrieked, her perm bouncing with every swing. Her sidekick Dave, a weaselly guy with a man bun and a smartphone, filmed the chaos like he was Scorsese directing a low-budget HOA horror flick. I set my coffee down, slow and deliberate, my sniper instincts pinging like radar. Karen was loud, but her eyes darted nervously. She wasn't as confident as she sounded. Dave, meanwhile, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, probably regretting volunteering for the HOA's enforcement committee. I stepped onto the porch, hands in my pockets, voice calm as a sniper's breath before a shot. "Karen, you're gonna want to put that bat down before you hurt yourself. Or my door. Or both." She froze mid-swing, her clipboard tucked under one arm like a general's battle plans. "Don't you dare lecture me, Jack. This fence violates Rule 7.4, and I have every right to enforce compliance." I raised an eyebrow. "But breaking into my house? That's a bold interpretation of Homeowners Association." She huffed, waving the bat like it was a scepter. "You were warned. Multiple notices? Your fence is an eyesore, and I'm here to ensure this neighborhood doesn't turn into a hillbilly junkyard." Dave nodded weakly, his phone wobbling as he captured her tirade. I glanced at the fence. Solid cedar posts, weathered just enough to look like it belonged. Hillbilly. I've seen war zones with less ego than this woman. "Karen," I said, "I've faced scarier threats in basic training. That bat's from a kid's t-ball league, isn't it?" Her face turned the color of a stop sign. "You think you're untouchable, because you're some hotshot veteran." "I run this I make the rules." I chuckled, low and dangerous. "You don't run my ranch, lady, and you're trespassing. Texas law doesn't take kindly to that." "Neither do I," she faltered, the bat dipping slightly, but her ego was too inflated to back down. "Dave, keep filming!" "We'll need evidence when we sue him for non-compliance." I took a step closer, my voice dropping to the tone I used to make recruits rethink their life choices. "Karen, you're on my property, smashing my door, waving a weapon. You sure you want to play this game? I'm not the guy you want to test." Her hands shook, but she doubled down, quoting Rule 7.4 like it was scripture. "All exterior structures must be approved by the Architectural Committee, and your fence was not." I tilted my head. "Show me the violation notice. The official one, not your glitter pen manifesto." She thrust her clipboard at me, a mess of highlighted bylaws and sticky notes. I skimmed it, stalling to assess her like a target through a scope. Karen was loud, but she was sloppy. Her bat swings were wild, her arguments flimsy. "Dave, still filming." Looked like he was praying for a meteor strike. I handed the clipboard back. This says you need a court order to enter my property. Got one. Her silence was louder than her screaming. That's what I thought. You're breaking the law, Karen. And I'm not the forgiving type. Neighbors started peeking from their windows, drawn by the commotion like moths to a porch light. Old man Jenkins across the road leaned on his mailbox, grinning like he'd bet on me in a cage match. Karen noticed the audience and spun to Dave. Make sure you get their faces! They're all witnesses to his defiance. I smirked. Or they're witnesses to your felony, your call. I could have disarmed her in 3 seconds flat. 2 to close the distance, 1 to twist the bat from her grip. But I didn't need to. Karen was unraveling herself, her bravado crumbling under the weight of her own absurdity. I leaned against the porch railing, casual as if we were discussing the weather. Ever had an HOA drive you nuts, folks? I called to the neighbors, loud enough for Dave's phone to catch. Share your worst HOA stories in the comments. Where are you watching this from? Phone, TV, laptop. What time is it there? Karen's jaw dropped. You're mocking me. I grinned. Now I'm engaging my audience. You're the one turning my ranch into a circus. She swung the bat one last time, a weak thump against my doorframe, then stormed off, dragging Dave behind her. This isn't over, Jack. You'll regret this. I waved, sipping my coffee. Mind the gate, Karen. It's rustic, too. As her SUV peeled out, I memorized her license plate out of habit. Karen thought she'd won round 1, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. I'd spent years outsmarting enemies with bigger weapons and better plans. This was just recon. The real fight was coming, and I'd be ready. With cameras, evidence, and a sheriff who owed me a favor. Karen wanted a war, she'd get one, and I never miss my shot. Karen's SUV roared off my property, kicking up enough dust to choke a longhorn, but the echo of her bat against my door still rang in my ears. I stood on the porch of Lone Star Ranch, coffee gone cold, sizing up the battlefield. Karen, the HOA's self-crowned dictator, thought she'd scared me into submission with her T-ball bat and Rule 7.4 sermon. She didn't know I'm Jack Thompson, retired Special Forces sniper, and I've stared down warlords who'd eat her clipboard for breakfast. When a sniper faces an HOA Karen who's really outgunned, spoiler, it ain't me. I stepped inside, assessing the damage. My oak door looked like it had lost a bar fight. Splinters everywhere, one hinge dangling like a drunk at last call. Karen's tantrum was more than just bad manners. It was trespassing, assault, maybe even a felony under Texas law. HOAs can't just waltz onto your land without notice or a court order, no matter how many bylaws they waive. I'd learned that from a buddy who'd tangled with a similar tyrant in Austin. But Karen wasn't here for legal debates. She wanted war, and I was happy to oblige, just not her way. I grabbed a broom to sweep up the debris, my mind running scenarios like I was back in Kandahar. Karen's sidekick, Dave, was still out there, probably uploading his shaky footage to the HOA's newsletter, titled, Local Rancher Defies Civilization. I smirked, picturing the headline. Let him film. Evidence cuts both ways. I needed to keep my cool, play the long game. Years of high-stakes missions had taught me patience. Wait for the shot, don't force it. Karen was a moving target, but she'd slip up. The crunch of gravel snapped me alert. Karen's SUV was back, parked just beyond my gate. She stormed out, bat still in hand, Dave trailing like a scolded puppy. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered now, drawn by the drama like vultures to roadkill. Old man Jenkins winked at me from his mailbox, holding a beer like it was 10 a.m. showtime. Karen, oblivious to her audience, marched up to my gate, pointing her bat like a deranged conductor. Jack Thompson, you will comply with Rule 7.4, or I'll have your fence torn down by Monday. I leaned against my porch railing, casual as a Sunday barbecue. Morning again, Karen. You forget something. Like, say, a court order. Her perm quivered with rage. I don't need a court order to enforce community standards. Your fence is a blight, and I'm here to protect property values. Dave, sweating through his flannel, fumbled his phone, clearly regretting his life choices. I tilted my head. Property values. Karen, this is rural Texas. My nearest neighbor's a coyote. You're gonna find him for howling off key. The crowd chuckled, and Karen's face went from red to nuclear.
Laugh all you want, Jack.
Rule 7.4 gives me authority. She thrust her clipboard at me again, pages flapping like a wounded bird. I took it, pretending to read, stalling to gauge her intent. Her hands shook, the bat wobbling like she'd never swung it before today. Nervous. Good. Nervous enemies make mistakes. I handed the clipboard back. Says here you need written notice and a hearing before enforcement. Where's my notice, Karen? Or did you use it to line Dave's hamster cage? Dave coughed, nearly dropping his phone. Karen sputtered.
You got notices! 3 of them!
I crossed my arms. Funny, I only got your glitter. Pen love letters. No official notice, no hearing. That's selective enforcement, Karen. Illegal per Fowler v. Golden Pacific Bancorp. Look it up. Her eyes widened, like I'd just recited her social security number. I hadn't, but I could have. Sniper training includes reading people, and Karen was an open book written in crayon. The neighbors were fully invested now, whispering and pointing. A woman in curlers, Mrs. Delaney, I think, called out, "Get her, Jack." Karen spun, bat raised, and I stepped forward, voice low. "Put it down, Karen. You're scaring the locals, and I'm pretty sure assault's not in the HOA handbook." She hesitated, then lowered the bat, but not before quoting Rule 7.4 again, like it was her personal 10 commandments. All exterior structures must be approved, and your fence is unapproved. I sighed, channeling every drill sergeant I'd ever met. Show me the approval records then. Prove my fence wasn't okayed by the last board. She froze, mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. Dave, sensing disaster, zoomed in on her face, probably dreaming of TikTok fame. I pressed. No records. Then you're just bullying me, Karen. And I don't bully easy. The crowd murmured approval, and Jenkins raised his beer in salute. I noticed her grip tighten on the bat, her knuckles white. She was cornered, and cornered animals get desperate. I kept my stance loose, ready to disarm her if she swung. "Karen," I said, almost gentle, "I've faced scarier threats in basic training. Put the bat down before you hurt yourself." She glared, but the fire was fading. "This isn't over," she hissed, turning to Dave. "Stop filming, you idiot." He fumbled, nearly dropping his phone again, and the crowd laughed outright. As she retreated to her SUV, I called out, "Hey, Karen, you ever think about therapy? Might help with the bat thing." The neighbors roared, and she slammed her door so hard I thought the windows would crack. Dave scrambled in, and they peeled out, leaving another dust cloud and a cheering crowd. Jenkins ambled over, grinning. "You're a legend, Jack. She's been terrorizing us for years." I nodded, already planning. "She's not done, Jenkins. But neither am I." I headed inside, my sniper brain in overdrive. Karen was sloppy, emotional, and breaking every rule in her own book. Trespassing, assault, selective enforcement. She'd handed me a full clip of ammo. I just needed to aim it right. First, I'd check the bylaws myself, see what else she was hiding. Then, I'd call my sheriff buddy Mike, and set up some insurance. Karen thought she was the hunter, but she'd just wandered into my crosshairs. This standoff was just the warm-up. The real shot was coming, and I never miss. Karen's SUV vanished into the Texas horizon, leaving a dust trail and the faint echo of her wounded ego. I stood on my porch at Lone Star Ranch, broom in hand, sweeping up the splinters of my battered door. The neighbors had dispersed, old man Jenkins toasting me with his beer like I'd won a cage match. But this wasn't over. Karen, the HOA's clipboard-wielding warlord, had declared war with her T-ball bat and Rule 7.4 obsession. She thought she'd scare me, Jack Thompson, retired Special Forces sniper, into submission. Big mistake. What secrets was this HOA hiding, and how does a sniper find them? With patience, precision, and a knack for sniffing out lies, I tossed the broom aside and grabbed my keys. Karen's stunt. Trespassing, assault. and a whole lot of stupid, was a felony-sized misstep, but I wasn't ready to call my sheriff buddy, Mike, just yet. A sniper doesn't fire until the target's clear. I needed intel, and that meant going straight to the source, the HOA office, a beige bunker of bureaucracy 5 miles down the road. If Karen was lying about my fence, I'd find the proof buried in her own paperwork. Plus, I could use a break from the ranch's new, smashed door aesthetic. The HOA office smelled like stale coffee and regret, with fluorescent lights that could make a cactus depressed. Linda, the receptionist, looked up from her crossword puzzle, her glasses sliding down her nose. "Jack Thompson," she said, smirking. "Heard you had a run-in with Karen. You here to surrender or start a revolution?" I leaned on the counter, flashing the grin that once got me past a checkpoint in Fallujah. "Just here for some light reading, Linda. Bylaws, meeting minutes, maybe a map to Karen's sanity." Linda chuckled, sliding a stack of papers my way. "Good luck. She guards these like they're the nuclear codes." I flipped through the bylaws, my eyes scanning for Rule 7.4. All exterior structures must be approved for aesthetic consistency. Vague enough to weaponize, but nothing about enforcement procedures. The minutes, though, were a goldmine. Karen had been bullying residents for years, fining one guy $150 for an unauthorized mailbox, another $200 for a gaudy flagpole. Selective enforcement, illegal as hell, per Fowler v. Golden Pacific Bancorp. I'd seen this in war zones. Power, hungry types twisting rules to control the herd. Karen was no dictator, just a suburban wannabe with a perm and a power trip. Linda leaned in, whispering, "She's got half the board scared and the other half bribed with potluck invites. Nobody challenges her." I nodded, tucking the papers under my arm. "They will now." "Thanks, Linda. You ever want a coffee, it's on me." She winked. "Make it a bourbon, and we'll talk." I laughed, already liking her more than most of the county. Next stop, my neighbor Tom's place, a half-mile down the road. Tom was outside, watering a garden gnome that looked like it was plotting a coup. "Jack," he called, waving me over. "Heard you sent Karen running. You're my hero." I shrugged. "Just warming up. She's got a thing for my fence." "You know why?" Tom snorted, pointing at his gnome. "She fined me $200 for this guy. Said he was tacky. I think she's got a gnome hit list in her garage." I grinned. If she's this mad about my fence, imagine her reaction to a full-blown gnome rebellion. Tom invited me in, cracking open a couple of beers. He spilled the dirt. Karen had been terrorizing the neighborhood since she took over the HOA 3 years ago. Fines for unmowed lawns, unapproved paint colors, even a kid's lemonade stand. But the kicker: my fence had been approved by the previous board, before Karen's reign. Tom had seen the paperwork himself. "She's lying, Jack. Probably wants to flex her power or cover something up." I sipped my beer, my sniper brain clicking. "Cover what?" Tom shrugged. "Dunno, but her own place has a shed that's uglier than my gnome. Never find herself, though. Bingo. Karen was breaking her own rules, the ultimate HOA hypocrisy." I thanked Tom and headed home, my recon mission bearing fruit. Back at the ranch, I spread the HOA papers across my kitchen table like a battle map. The old board's minutes confirmed Tom's story. My fence was approved in 2022, stamped and signed. Karen's claim was a flat-out lie, and her selective enforcement was a lawsuit waiting to happen. But I didn't want lawyers. I wanted her to squirm, to face the neighbors she'd bullied and lose her little empire. For that, I needed more than paper. I needed a trap. I leaned back, picturing Karen's smug face when I'd called her bluff about the approval records. She'd frozen, her bat drooping like her confidence. She wasn't just sloppy, she was scared. Scared people hide things, and I'd bet my ranch she was hiding violations of her own. That shed Tom mentioned. If it was unapproved, it was leverage. And if she was dodging complaints about it, the neighbors would love to know. I grabbed my phone and texted Linda, "Any dirt on Karen's property?" "Shed, maybe." Her reply came fast, "Shed's unapproved. Complaints buried." "You didn't hear it from me." I smirked. Oh, Karen, you're making this too easy. My sniper training kicked in. Patience, precision, preparation. I'd learned to blend into shadows, to wait days for the perfect shot. Karen was no insurgent, but she was a target, and I'd hit her where it hurt her reputation. First, I'd verify the shed intel. A quick drive by her place tomorrow, maybe a drone flyover if I felt fancy. Then I'd dig deeper into the AOA's complaint logs. If Linda was right, Karen was suppressing evidence, which meant more ammo for me. Every lie she told was a step closer to her downfall. As the sun set, I sat on my porch sipping a fresh coffee and eyeing my fence. It stood proud, rustic, and defiant like me. Karen thought she could bully me into compliance, but she'd miscalculated. I wasn't just a rancher. I was a man who'd outsmarted enemies with bigger weapons and better plans. She'd swung her bat, but I was loading my rifle. Figuratively, of course. For now, I raised my mug to the stars. Here's to you, Karen. Keep digging your grave. I'll bring the shovel. Tomorrow I'd go full recon, gather every scrap of dirt, and set the stage for her reckoning. The neighbors were watching. The board was shaky, and I had the truth on my side. Karen wanted a fight. She'd get one, and I never miss. The Texas sun was barely up, but I was already wired, sipping coffee on my porch at Lone Star Ranch, plotting like I was back in a desert hide with a scope. Karen, the HOA's bat-swinging tyrant, thought she'd cowed me with her door-smashing tantrum and Rule 7.4 gospel. She didn't know Jack Thompson, retired Special Forces sniper, was done playing defense. My recon had paid off her lies about my fence, her buried complaints, her unapproved shed. Now it was time to show Karen you don't mess with a sniper's ranch. I was setting a trap, and she was about to step right into it. First, I turned my property into Fort Knox, sniper style. I installed hidden cameras around the ranch, the kind I used to monitor hostiles in Fallujah. Perfectly legal in Texas, they'd catch every move without a peep. One by the gate, two on the barn, another near my offensive cedar fence. If Karen sneezed on my land, I'd have it in 4K. Next, I called my sheriff buddy Mike, who owed me for pulling his truck out of a ditch last winter. Mike, I said, got an HOA nutcase trespassing and swinging a bat. Might need you to flash the badge soon. He laughed. Jack, you versus an OA. I'm bringing popcorn. With my defenses set, I waited. Karen didn't disappoint. 3 days after our standoff, her SUV rolled up, kicking up dust like she was auditioning for a Mad Max sequel. Dave, her man bun minion, was with her, clutching his phone like a lifeline. A new face tagged along: Edna, a board member with a perm rivaling Karen's and a purse that screamed, "I'm here to judge." They marched to my gate, Karen waving a fresh clipboard like it was the Magna Carta. I stepped onto the porch, all smiles, playing the compliant rancher. Morning, Karen. Back for round 2. Coffee's on. She ignored the offer, thrusting her clipboard at me. Jack Thompson, your barn's paint violates Rule 8.2. All structures must maintain approved color schemes. Repaint it by Friday or we'll fine you $500. I glanced at my barn. Classic red, same as half the county. Red's unapproved now. You gonna find the fire station next? Dave snickered, then froze under Karen's glare. Edna clutched her purse tighter, clearly out of her depth. I gestured to the house. Why don't y'all come in? We can talk this out like neighbors. Karen hesitated, sniffing a trap, but her ego was too big to back down. Fine, she snapped, but don't think you're charming your way out of this. I led them inside, past my splintered door, her handiwork, and into the living room. Dave filmed, probably dreaming of HOA TikTok stardom, while Edna perched on my couch like it might bite. Karen launched into her spile, waving her bat. Yes, she brought it again and ranting about my barn's garish. Hugh. I nodded, all earnest, like I was taking notes for a TED Talk. Then I sprang the trap. Karen, before we get to the barn, let's clear up that fence issue. I pulled out my phone, cooing up the camera footage from her break-in. The screen lit up. Karen, mid-rage, smashing my door, shrieking about Rule 7.4, Dave filming like a deer in headlights. The timestamp glowed, undeniable proof. Edna gasped, her purse hitting the floor. Dave's phone wobbled, his face paler than a ghost. Karen's bat drooped, her mouth opening and closing like a carp on a dock. "That's not what it looks like," she stammered. I leaned back, grinning like a cat with a canary. "Looks like trespassing and assault to me, Karen. Texas don't play with that. My cameras have better aim than your bat." Edna turned to Karen, eyes wide. "You broke into his home." Karen floundered, her clipboard shaking.
I was enforcing compliance. He's the one breaking rules.
I held up the old HOA minutes, my recon jackpot. "Funny thing, my fence was approved in 2022. You lied, Karen. Selective enforcement's illegal. Ask Fowler v. Golden Pacific Bancorp." Dave dropped his clipboard, papers scattering like confetti. Edna stood, purse in a death grip. "Karen, this is unacceptable. The board will hear about this." Karen's face went from red to purple, her perm practically vibrating. "You set me up," she screeched. I shrugged. "You set yourself up. I just pressed record. Oh, and Mike, sheriff buddy of mine, is on speed dial. Trespassing, assault, maybe vandalism. That's jail time." "Karen," she lunged forward, bat raised, but I didn't flinch. Years of staring down AK-47s make a T-ball bat look like a pool noodle. "Careful," I said, voice low. "Cameras are still rolling." She froze, then deflated, the fight draining out of her. Edna grabbed her arm. "We're leaving. This is a disgrace." Dave scrambled after them, tripping over his own feet. As they reached the door, I called out, "Karen, my barn's red because it's classic. Your logic, though, that's what's garish." They piled into the SUV, Karen muttering threats about consequences. I waved, sipping my coffee, watching the dust cloud fade. The trap had worked better than a sniper's ambush. Karen's power was crumbling, and Edna's reaction told me the board was shaky. I texted Mike the footage just in case Karen got bold, and checked the cameras. Every second of her meltdown was saved, ready to go viral at the next HOA meeting. The neighbors would eat this up. Old man Jenkins was probably already planning a watch party. I sat at my kitchen table, replaying the footage, chuckling at Karen's weak defense. It was like watching a bad courtroom drama, with her as the villain who forgot her lines. But I wasn't done. Tom's tip about her unapproved shed was next. If I could prove she was dodging her own rules, it'd be the cherry on this revenge sundae. I grabbed my keys for a drive. By tomorrow, recon never stops. Karen thought she was untouchable, but she'd just walked into my kill zone. The board was turning, the neighbors were buzzing, and I had the evidence to bury her. This was my ranch, my rules, and Karen was about to learn what happens when you swing a bat at a sniper's door. The dust from Karen's SUV had barely settled when I sat on my porch at Lone Star Ranch, coffee in hand, savoring the afterglow of my trap. Karen, the HOA's bat-wielding despot, had walked right into my ambush, her break and caught on camera, her lies about my fence exposed. I'm Jack Thompson, retired Special Forces sniper, and I just turned her clipboard empire into a house of cards. Justice hits hard, with a twist that'll make you cheer, and I was ready to watch it land. The footage of Karen's door, smashing meltdown, spread faster than a prairie fire. Old man Jenkins, my beer-swigging neighbor, texted me a link to a neighborhood group chat, where Mrs. Delaney had posted the video, captioned, "HOA Karen vs. Sniper Jack, guess who wins?" By sundown, it was on every phone from here to Austin, with comments like, "Karen's bat needs a timeout," and "Jack for OA president." I chuckled, picturing Karen's perm wilting as her reign unraveled. My cameras had done what years of sniper training taught me: aim true, strike silent, win clean. The next OA meeting was a circus, and I was the ringmaster. The community center was packed. Neighbors I hadn't seen since the last 4th of July barbecue crammed into folding chairs, whispering like they'd bet on a prize fight. Karen sat at the board table, clutching her clipboard like a life raft, her face the color of a bad sunburn. Edna, the board member I'd spooked with the footage, avoided her gaze while Dave, her man-bun minion, looked like he'd rather be auditioning for a boy band than sitting there. I stood in the back, arms crossed, letting the crowd's energy do the heavy lifting. Edna took the mic, her voice shaky but firm. "We've reviewed evidence of misconduct by our president, Karen Mitchell. Trespassing, assault, and selective enforcement are unacceptable." She glanced at me, and I gave a nod, sniper's code for proceed. The projector flicked on, and there it was, Karen, bat in hand, turning my door into kindling, screeching about Rule 7.4. The room erupted, gasps, laughs, even a "You go, Jack," from Tom, my gnome-loving neighbor. Karen stammered,
This is a setup!
He provoked me, but the crowd wasn't buying it. Jenkins yelled, provoked, "Lady, you brought a bat to a fence fight." The vote was swift and brutal. By a landslide, Karen was ousted as president, her clipboard confiscated like a dictator's scepter. Edna stepped up as interim chair, promising to review every fine Karen had issued. The crowd cheered, and I slipped out, not needing the spotlight. Back at the ranch, I got a call from Tom.
Jack, they approved your fence.
"And they're scrapping half the rules. Rule 7.4's toast." I grinned, raising my coffee to the stars. To freedom, Tom, and gnomes. But the real payoff was still coming. My recon hadn't stopped with the footage. Tom's tip about Karen's unapproved shed nagged at me, so I'd taken a drive by the day after the trap. Her backyard was a mess, rusted lawn chairs, a sagging shed, and jackpot, a hot tub that looked like it belonged in a Vegas penthouse, not rural Texas. No way that monstrosity was HOA approved. I texted Linda, the receptionist who'd spilled the first dirt. "Hot tub at Karen's. Any records?" Her reply was instant none. She buried 3 complaints. "You're evil, Jack." I laughed. "Evil? Nah, just precise." I tipped off Edna anonymously, attaching photos of the hot tub with a note, "Check Karen's compliance with Rule 7.4. The irony was delicious. Karen, who'd fined Tom for a gnome and me for a fence, was breaking her own rules. At the next board meeting, they hit her with a $500 fine, the same amount she'd threatened me with for my barn's garish red. Tom texted me a play-by-play. "She's live vid, Jack. Says it's a conspiracy. Edna's not budging." I leaned back, picturing Karen stewing in that hot tub, her ego boiling hotter than the water. I didn't press charges, though I could have. Trespassing, assault, vandalism. Karen's rap sheet was longer than a CVS receipt. But jail felt too easy. I wanted her to live with the humiliation, to know the neighborhood she'd bullied had turned on her. Instead, I sent her a parting gift, a garden gnome, identical to Tom's, tacky. One delivered to her doorstep with a note, "From your friendly sniper. Stay off my ranch." Tom reported she threw it in her trash, but not before the delivery guy snapped a pic for the group chat. "She's probably soaking her ego in that tub right now." Tom quipped. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. The community rallied like never before. Mrs. Delaney organized a fence freedom barbecue at my ranch, with Jenkins grilling burgers and Tom parading his gnome like a war trophy. The new board, led by Edna, rolled back Karen's absurd fines and rewrote the bylaws to limit HOA overreach. My fence stood proud, my barn stayed red, and my door got a new oak upgrade, paid for by the HOA as an apology. I was back to sipping coffee in peace, my sanctuary restored. As I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the Texas sky, I thought about Karen. She'd swung her bat, waved her rules, and thought she'd win. But she'd underestimated a sniper's patience, a neighbor's loyalty, and the power of a well-placed camera. Her hot tub fine was the ultimate twist, proof that karma swings harder than any bat. I raised my mug. "Here's to you, Karen. Next time, pick a softer target." To the folks out there faced an HOA tyrant, share your story below. What's the dumbest rule you've dealt with? Tell me where you're watching from. Phone, TV, laptop.
And what time it is there?
Me, I'm on my porch, 7 p.m. Texas time, enjoying the quiet. Karen's gone. My fence is legal, and my gnome's on guard. Life's good at Lone Star Ranch, and I've got the footage to prove it.